Hello and welcome to Seven Bridges Radio, home to probably the UK's #1 lacrosse show, Unnecessary Guffness, presented to you by Tom, yes he is Polly Tully Dies, Higgs, half man half zebra, and myself, Darragh. And no, I will not tell you where Pot of Gold is. This week we have an extra 15 minutes to fill you in on all things lacrosse, and yes, it's back by popular demand. We have the Breakfast Club, and we have number 23 Duke's Mike Sowers.
We are here a little bit earlier this week. We're still missing Darragh. I'm not quite sure the news has got to him just yet, but we're on a bit early this week. That's okay. I'm here. Higgs is here. Darragh will be here, I hope.
At some point.
At some point he'll be here. But yeah, we've got an extra 15 minutes today. I'll probably let Higgs talk a lot while I go on mute and quickly finish my dinner, which I didn't quite have time to finish, but that's okay. He's shaking his head now. He's got nothing to say.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
We've got another 15 minutes, so we can take things a little bit easier while we wait for Darragh. And if anything, we could always start with just a really annoying Darragh's favourite segment. And we could spend 15 minutes doing a little bit of Breakfast Club.
Oh, we'd be devastated to miss it.
We'll come back to it at the end. He's our NCAA expert, and it's a big NCAA week this week. So
we have been a little neglectful of it over the past few weeks.
I think
because we've been so excited about everything that's been going on in the PLL. But we've got time to do a deep dive this week. Darragh's coming in with some big game news. We're going to talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament coming up in May, and how that's looking. What the automatic selections are looking like from the key conferences, and a little about who's maybe leading the at-large bids. And then we're going to tie this all together with the PLL draft in a couple of weeks. And as we go through the games, we're going to talk about some of the major players, some of the big names who will be coming up in the PLL draft in 2.5 weeks' time? Something like that.
I have it up here. April 26th is the PLL college draft. And it doesn't actually say where you can watch it yet, which that's been a bit of a strange one. The expansion draft was just on YouTube. The entry draft was on Twitter, which was strange. I didn't watch it. I couldn't figure it out. That was on Twitter. So no idea where the college draft is going to be, but that's going to be on the 28th. I wouldn't even be surprised if the PLL have got a partnership with TikTok, and the college draft that'd be the most lacrosse thing to ever happen. Not on any sort of big networks. This ain't on ESPN. This ain't on what are the other big ones in America? The other big Sky Sports.
They have a deal with NBC, don't they? They have a deal with NBC,
which is why I was surprised that it wasn't on like Peacock or anything, the other draft. I'm surprised that, no idea why that was on Twitter, but that's on the 26th. I think one of the things this week, talking about, hopefully doing a bit more of a deep dive into the NCAA, is this is pretty much the first week where there's been no sort of big lacrosse news. Like, there's been some good games, which I've been seeing knocking around, but pretty much every other week, it's been pretty automatic in terms of, well, we're going to talk about this. What else are we going to talk about? This has happened. What else are we going to talk about? This has been it's not that nothing's happened, but it has been, for the first time in quite a while, a relatively quiet week, PLL-wise.
Yeah, it's just been a week of lacrosse, hasn't it? There's been nobody's been kicked off a team or left a team or agreed by mutual consent to leave a team.
No, still don't know what's happened. I still don't know what's happened.
No drafts, no trades, nothing like that. So, just some good lacrosse.
The only little bit of news which we have got, which it's not much to talk about, but I think it's worth at least a mention. And there we go. I was just waiting for my Instagram to load up here because that's where we posted it. We do actually know when the PLL will be back. Between June 4th and September 19th is when the PLL will run. I don't know. We've got Darragh back with us now.
Hello.
Hey, how are you doing? We're just going over the news that the PLL will be back 4th of June until 19th of September.
Praise the Lord.
And it says the 2021 schedule drops in 1 week, and that was posted 2 days ago. So by this time next week, we should have schedule for you. Again, no idea how interesting that'll be. I think it'll just be interesting to see how often they're playing, because that's quite a few months of lacrosse. I think the last one, it was pretty brief. The one that,
obviously last year they were in the bubble. They did it all over a period of 2.5 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, right when NBC's Olympics coverage was supposed to be. It's weird how that turned out.
3 weeks as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. That works out nicely, doesn't it? What coincidence?
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how many rounds of games there are going to be, and where they're going to go. Which parts of the USA are they going to touch down in? For those of you who don't know, the PLL is a bit of a traveling roadshow. So all 8 teams, nobody really has a home city. Some of the team identities sort of have a university background, like Whip Snakes is really heavy University of Maryland alumni. Atlas was sort of built around a Johns Hopkins sort of thing. But then, they all descend on the same city, and then over the course of 2 days, it'll be this year, there'll be 4 games. So 2 on a Friday or a Saturday and 2 the following day. And then they up sticks, everybody goes home. And then in a couple of weeks' time, they all go somewhere else and do it all again.
It got a bit frantic last year, didn't it? Like those games, I remember I was growing a new elbow at the time, but those games at 4 a.m. in the morning or something ridiculous. And I was up at that time, but it was a pity because there were such good games that you'd have to miss a couple of them. So I'm delighted to see there's only 2.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see this year whether the standard of play continues to improve. Because I think what they probably benefited from last year was the players all being together all the time. Mm-hmm. So they could really generate that team spirit, keeping practicing every day. You're putting that stuff into practice straight away, whereas what we're probably going to see this year is a return to the big training camp, like they did similar to what they did in the first year, where they took everybody down to the IMG Academy in Florida and pinned everybody in and did all their media stuff and all that sort of stuff. And then also, a week of intense training camp before everybody goes home and then comes back together again for the start of the season with a bit of practice a couple of days beforehand. But it's not like, when you're at home in a professional sports environment and you're training 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, and then you've got your game on the other day and a rest day or what have you.
I think as well, momentum would have played a lot in that the summer kind of tournament, because if you don't get off to a good start, you're basically under the cosh. But with you can have a good weekend, you can have a bad weekend. Like look at the first year, it was absolutely bonkers. Some of the results that came out, it was just 1 week they're on fire, the next week they're not so much, and it was consistency. So I'd be interested to see how teams can rebound. That's what I can't wait for.
I think one thing which I think we'll probably touch on again in a future episode, but while we're talking about it, we've got a little bit of extra time, may as well ask you guys now. Just drop my phone. Every week. I've got it there because I've got the information up and I'm trying to remember what we're talking about.
You don't actually play lacrosse, do you?
I clearly can't keep hold of anything now. But in terms of the PLL teams not being based anywhere like the MLL teams are, obviously the Boston Cannons now just becoming the Cannons. Is that something you personally like? Do you prefer it to teams being based somewhere? And going forward, as more teams get added, hopefully, again, which is something else we'll probably be talking about, the need for more teams. Do you want to see it stay that way, this travelling roadshow? Or would you rather, as the league gets bigger and we get more teams, would we rather get the Boston Cannons back or the Cleveland Chaos or whatever?
No, I think with such a especially young sport as lacrosse going professional, I think it's a necessity to keep it going. They have this type of format for the Final Four, and it's one of the most successful collegiate events that they have. They sell out well. They get a good few thousand going to Gillette Stadium for lacrosse. It's pretty impressive. I think it's important that you don't have a base because the MML tried to do it and it just didn't kick off. It's a bit of a dinosaur tactic, in my opinion, and I think it's revolutionary. I think it brings the sport to the masses before we can get that revenue and before you can start pumping millions into it, because let's be real, we don't really have that football that NBA has. We don't have the football that even baseball has. That's kind of going out of trend a little bit, but it still has the millions that lacrosse doesn't. So I think it's a necessity for survival and to bring it to the masses. I think it's genius.
See, I think I do.
That's it for me. Oh, sorry. Go on, Tom.
I was just going to quickly say, I do agree with you on that point, what you're saying, but in terms of you saying it stays this way, I I like it as it is for now. I think, like you say, it's necessary, with COVID even more so. It makes it a lot easier. And it definitely is easier for bringing it to people, for getting it organised, for saving money, which, I imagine is insanely important for the PLL because we don't have a hell of a lot of it. But I think moving forward, if it gets to a point where we've got, a few years down the line where it is picking up, if it's carried on picking up the way at the speed it currently is doing, and we've got that bit of a following, I'm not sure how I feel about, having another 5 teams, but still we're not based anywhere, and it is just this traveling thing. I think I like it as it is for now, and I think if it tried to change now, it would be shooting itself in the foot. I agree with you; it's necessary for survival, but I don't personally love it as a long-term option. How they go about changing that to okay, this year we're all based somewhere now. How that happens, I don't know. But I'm not sure about.
Yeah, but if let's say if the Water Dogs become I don't know, Wisconsin team, that's not going to be as cool. Like, I like to support Boston teams because so many Irish went there. Like, I lived there.
So you think if they start attaching them to places, then
it'd be like I wouldn't be as much of a Water Dogs. Yeah, I wouldn't be as much of a Water Dogs fan.
That's true.
I lived in Boston for a year. Shout out Alston, Pratt Street, and that's why 100% I'll go for the Boston Celtics, or especially the Boston Bruins. If the Water Dogs are Wisconsin, I have no link to it. How do they decide that?
Well,
yeah, that's
the corner they backed themselves into almost with this. They built these teams sort of around an identity. Like the Whip Snakes when they put the initial squads together, that was like a heavy Maryland focus, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they've tried to generate these identities. And then if they start putting them down places, then that identity is going to need to change to appeal to the local populace. But, the key things are, right, there is no proper massive mass demand for lacrosse, either live or on telly. College teams do okay because it's a college focus and students turn out to support their teams. The NLL Indoor League has done super well, but that's now been going for the best part of 40 years. And whilst there have been some massive successes like Philadelphia, Toronto, Vancouver, on and off, but Vancouver has had teams that have failed as well. Denver, they've also been some massive failures. So, and it was the same in the MLL as well. Like Boston was regularly turning out decent crowds. They were averaging sort of 7,000-8,000 before the PLL started. Denver always averaged 12,000. Admittedly, that was skewed by their big 4th of July thing that they had at Mile High, where they've got like 30,000 in, and that distorts your average for the year. But they were regularly turning out 9,000-10,000 crowds, which is fine. But the cost of TV production, the cost of running the stadium, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's not really any money for investment in the sport after that.
I think that's what. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah. So I'm going to say exactly what you were just about to say. That's one of the reasons why keeping this traveling roadshow format for the next few years, certainly until cities are going out and asking the PLL, can we have our team? When are you going to start putting your teams down in cities? Can we have one of them? We are going to offer the teams this package.
Yeah,
similar to what NFL teams do because of the revenue they generate outside of the stadium. Then it becomes a reasonable business prospect for the area. But another thing to consider is that 8 teams is probably about the limit for this traveling roadshow. You could maybe do 10 and a team has a bye week, but also you could do 9 teams and a team has a bye week. But 10, then you're looking at like 3 games in a day and 2 games, and you see it in international tournaments all the time, where once you start stacking 3 games on a single field in a day, things get pushed, the gaps become bigger, the broadcast crews get tired, the officials get tired, all that sort of thing, and everything sort of snowballs up, and all of a sudden you need 2 crews to run a day, at which point it becomes
and then look at Denver when they had the rain delays, like that pushed back so many games, and the thunder delays. I remember we were watching a Scotland game at the time, and it was just like lightning. It was just like, oh, you have to get off the bleachers because they're made of steel and you'll probably get electrocuted. It's like, what? Yeah, there's 38 teams here. But I think the PLL has the advantage has the backing of NBC. That's unbelievable. Number one, it gets it on TV, but number two, they have a couple of mil in their back pocket. That's like such a good safety blanket. And I think the PLL are doing this kind of, the weekend kind of tournament vibe, traveling to get up a bit of kind of the almost ethos and familiarity of lacrosse is their identity. And then they can almost use that traveling once you get more teams, have them settled, but still have people going to them cities then as the traveling to your traveling team, like home and away games. I think that could be quite a genius thing that they can actually, like, it's quite malleable in a way if they do get more teams.
And I think that maybe the next stop, say if we got to, like if they were looking at 12 teams, I don't think they will. I think 12 teams is a real long way away if you consider we're only at 8 now. There is a lot of talent around, but also if what they want to do is have the best players in the world, which was their big selling thing, then 12's a long way away. But, if there was a time when there was 12 teams, that's 2 conferences and it's alternate weekends. And you basically have the one broadcast set up and that goes around. And then, half the teams go one week, half the teams go the next week. And then there's a big pile on at the end and everybody gets to decide who's best.
Cool. Yeah. I really like that.
It definitely will be interesting to see how they expand, because I think everyone knows they have to. I mean, we're definitely going to talk about it again after the drafts when we look at who's not playing at the end of the season, who's sat an entire season on the bench, who deserves to be playing. There is going to be a lot of untapped talent. And I think that'll bring us, back again to, do we need to add more teams? What issues does that bring up? Like Higgs was saying, having too many teams in the PLL if we stay travelling. You're talking about the weather. I remember in the when we were in the bubble, there was like one storm and it messed like a couple of days up. Everything was pushed back. Because there was only like 7 teams at the time, it only messed a couple of days up. If there was 12 teams playing on the same pitch and there's a thunderstorm when no one's allowed outside, everyone has to stay inside for fear of getting electrocuted because weather in America is crazy, then that's not plausible. And like you say, that's going to end up probably being more of a hassle than it's worth for the PLL and the Rabel boys. So that's where you start talking about, do we have B teams? Do we have these development leagues? Like I know they have it in baseball. Do we have it in? I think they have it in basketball as well, where you've got like
hockey too.
Yeah, and you've got like the Toronto Raptors, and then you've got the Raptors 905, who are like the Raptors, but the ones who aren't quite good enough. Is that the way it's going to go to get people playing
like a minor?
Yeah, like a minor league for us.
Yeah, I think they should. But my so I'm part of obviously Premier League lacrosse group of pioneers that we can actually talk to the PLL. My suggestion was, they asked this question, what should we do? And I suggested there should be a minors because there's so much talent in lacrosse. Also, it would have a chance for Europeans. Let's say 1 or 2 of them are good enough. There's a couple of Japanese, there's a couple of Australians. Give Europeans a chance to play in that league. Number one, develop. But the only thing is, it would have. I'd suggest to keep, like, they're not going to see NBC are not going to pump a load of money into that. But you do it at your own voluntarily do it. You'd have a job, but you also maybe volunteer it, subsidized slightly for a weekend.
That just sounds like the MLL, but with extra steps.
Yeah, but exactly. But you wouldn't get paid like.
We got to do that.
Yeah, but it gives you a shot for Europeans to come in to Australia, to undiscovered talent. Some people bloom a little later than others. Some people only took the sport up a couple of years ago. You know what I mean? It gives them a chance to be seen by them teams and to be poached like the minors in hockey. I think it'll be really cool. It's kind of more on the players' onus and on their own back, where it will be a bit of a struggle because you haven't gone straight to the PLL. But it gives you a chance to almost be like a redshirt walk-on or whatever it is in American football, where you can just go to the trials and do it at your own risk.
Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely interesting looking at all these different options. I mean, us just sat here, we've figured out about 4 ways to do something. I think the only thing is that I do hope in the next few years they do something. I mean, I can see them adding more teams, but I think it's got to get to a point where even if you don't do it, at least say to us, look, this is where we're going. This is the next step. We're expanding the teams. We're stopping the traveling. We're add in minor leagues, something like that. I feel needs to come in. It's great as it is, and in a few years after they've properly found their feet, properly settled down, something like that needs to happen. But how long that'll take, God knows. Down the line, but something.
It really sounds like we should be trying to get an interview with Paulie Rabes and get this nailed down. Talk about his plans for.
Still not replying to any of my messages.
Expansion. He's the worst. He's not actually. He's a very nice guy.
No, he's the worst. On this show, we got Greg Gorenley and friend of a podcast, Paul Rabel, Chris Hogan, Mike Sowers, who I also tried to message about Breakfast Club and didn't get back to me.
He's just intimidating.
I can't stand them. Honestly,
what it is. They're not okay with being on the number one UK lacrosse-based internet radio show.
No, they're not big enough yet.
You got to give it to him.
Greg's the only one willing to step down.
Yeah, but he is a beast, so come on.
The beast.
I think PLL needs to get Beans Lacrosse Club going.
Yeah, Beans Lacrosse Club. I'm so annoyed on April Fool's, because for people who don't know, Beans Lacrosse Club started as an April Fool's joke last year, where I don't even know where it came from. It just popped up. I think someone probably works for the PLL.
Just before they released the Water Dog's name, wasn't it?
Yeah. Was it?
They just dropped the seventh team is going to be Beans Lacrosse Club.
Dropping bombs.
But this year on April Fool's Day, they released official Beans jerseys. And they're absolutely amazing. It's just a PLL jersey covered in beans, not actual beans, but it's just the design. Beans. You don't get sent a shirt covered in beans. But the PLL still has no shipping to the UK, like they haven't done for like months now, because they're sorting out Brexit stuff. I've been trying to get hold of a Chaos jersey, and when I saw this bean one drop, I'm getting 100%. I'm getting a beans jersey, but I still couldn't get it delivered to the UK. I was heartbroken because it was a limited time thing.
They'll come out with something else. Don't you worry. Yeah.
Next year. They bring it back for Beans jerseys 1st of April every year.
100%.
I'd love it if they did that for like an All-Stars thing or something. Just like PLL All-Stars against PLL Beans. They've got to do something. They've got to give them a game.
Yeah, 100%. I made a suggestion in the Pioneer group that they should have the Beans Lacrosse Club as their like online presence of like a link between the fans and the actual PLL. Yeah. And it could be like a really good like bridge between like making PLL players, I don't know, do some get to know them or something. I thought it'd be quite a cool thing, do suggestions from fans, but that fell on deaf ears, unfortunately. So we can just make it an actual PLL team.
Shall we directly reach out to Beans?
Yeah.
Shall we offer to be? I mean, we've got no money. We can't give you any money, but we'll be the official sponsors of PLL Beans, which just means we endorse you.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Send us a couple of t-shirts. It'll be fine.
And a helmet.
How much are you trying to get out of them? We're giving them nothing.
We have probably the UK's number one.
That's it right here, right now. For everyone listening, we endorse Beans Lacrosse Club. This is officially giving Beans Lacrosse Club our endorsement. We hope to be working with them in the very near future. A very exciting Beans times Unnecessary Guffness merch drop will be very soon.
Yeah, with Greg.
With Greg, of course, our only friend in the PLL, will be modelling all of the merchandise for us.
That's
make it look good too. Make it look good.
Yeah, I might get on that, lads.
Do it. Make some Beans Unnecessary Guffness merch. Before you do that though, I think it's time for us to move on to, as we were saying, today's episode. The last 20 minutes of it now will probably be a bit more of a deep dive into the NCAA, which, because the PLL has been so exciting recently, you're right, Higgs, we have been neglecting a little bit. So I think probably the best way to start this up is, because obviously this show started after the NCAA started again, either one of you two give us a quick roundup of the story so far of this crazy NCAA season.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's Duke and it's UNC, right?
I mean, if you can expand a little bit. Yeah, you're not wrong, but...
Yeah, so Duke and UNC have basically just taken it to everybody at the minute. Syracuse are making a strong showing. They had a poor start, though, didn't they? I think. Start for Syracuse? Yeah, they had a couple of rough games, didn't they?
They're 5-3.
Yeah, but, those 5 wins have been in the last 6 games.
It's.
So
I think
they're really on the uptick.
The thing I'm worried about is, we've got Duke and North Carolina, but I can see Notre Dame getting in there. They were quiet, but if you see in all the stats, like their attack is unbelievable. Everything is just strong. The defense is notoriously always strong. And they played Syracuse last week, Notre Dame versus Syracuse, and they beat Syracuse 18 goals to 11, and they've gone to 5-1. And watching them play is ridiculous. They got number 51, Pat Kavanagh, just doing a dodge from X, going around the goal, not even looking at the goal, throwing the ball behind his back and scoring against Syracuse. So they've got that ridiculous talent. They've got Will York, number 99. He must be 6'5", absolutely just throwing rockets into the back of the net. And then they have number 43, they have Griffin Westlin, who just he's just smart inside player. He can pick up all the balls and do behind the backs, everything. I think they're a team that can do absolutely everything that will give, especially in North Carolina and Duke, a bit of a problem. And Syracuse are looking, I know they had a good win against Albany. So they recently played big grudge match between Syracuse and Albany. They beat them 13-8. But if I'm honest with you, Albany didn't even score a goal in the final quarter. So that's what it came down to, in my opinion. Even Desco, so Coach Desco said, he was quoted saying, "We go out and we lose this game. I think there would be a lot of questions because the previous week losing to Notre Dame in the fashion they did. If they did lose that, I think they're out. But with that win, it's kind of put them back in the hunt a bit. And Johns Hopkins,
for sure.
I don't think they're doing it. They played Michigan, and don't get me wrong, Michigan have recently gone D1, incredible outfit, had a good game, just missing out on a couple of teams beating them, but they beat John Hopkins 13 goals to 10 with their keeper. They have the solid foundations Michigan do. Their keeper, John Kirikoff, 62% save percentage compared to Johns Hopkins, who had number 1, you Josh Curson, 36%, and then you had number 15, Ryan Darby, 43%. That's the difference.
Hopkins haven't really won they've won maybe one big game in the last 4 seasons. They beat all the teams you'd expect them to beat, but when they come up against top tier opposition, they tend not to win. One thing they've always had in their favour when it comes to the tournament selection is the fact that they play loads of good teams.
Yeah,
they go out and they play all the top teams every single year. So their strength of schedule is really high, even if their results don't necessarily put them in a top level bracket. I mean, they got into the tournament 7 or 8 years ago with a neutral record, but 7-7. Right, and there were teams that were sort of 10-2 with a weaker schedule that didn't get in, and you just sort of think, I mean, there is a little bit of navel gazing in the lacrosse community towards Hopkins, and that's fine. They are storied. They have traditionally been a really strong team, but I think as I say, they haven't won a big game in. Or they've won maybe 1 or 2 in the last 4 years, and it's just not enough.
They're just not the Hopkins of old. I remember when I started first watching lacrosse, 2012. It was Hopkins, Syracuse.
Oh God, yeah,
just dominant, and they're just shaky. That's what I feel. And you can't win games if you're. I don't mean to put it all on the keeper, but keepers, it shows how important they are. 36% and 43% definitely won't cut it as a top tier team.
I mean, what is it they're on so far this season? Is it 1-2 lost 5 or something?
2-5.
I don't see them having a shot. I mean, it's Hopkins. If they wanted to, I suppose we could pull it back by the time it does come round to tournament selection. But I'd like to see them there, just because it'd be a shame not to. But also, realistically, I think it would be unfair if we were. I don't think they, at the minute, deserve to be.
Yeah, and again, when you look at the list of the top guys coming out, the seniors graduating this year, in a lot of the PLL draft things, there's no Hopkins guys in that. There's multiple guys from Maryland, there's multiple guys from Ohio State and UNC and Duke, but there's no Hopkins guys there. They just don't have. I don't think they have the talent that they've had previously.
And isn't that not because they have such high academic achievements, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're notorious for that.
Yeah, but like the Ivy League teams are still pulling in the talent. So
true.
Their academic requirements aren't much less than Hopkins. But one thing that may have affected Hopkins is the growth of schools to the west.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of Hopkins would normally be, lacrosse school, bang. But then, you got places like Ohio State now with a really good lacrosse program and a pretty good academic medical program in there as well, and then all of a sudden that's a different look for somebody, and maybe moving to Ohio feels like a better option than staying in Baltimore,
True. Yeah, there is some, I think the game's coming up this week. There's actually a lot of games today. We have some games that will definitely kind of decide the final 5 bracket. Like you got again another rematch of Ohio State and Johns Hopkins. That's basically, in my opinion, win or you're out. You've got Notre Dame versus Duke coming up today. That's going to be unbelievable. And you've got North Carolina versus Virginia. And you got Michigan versus Maryland. If Michigan win that, beat Maryland, they're kind of in for a shot, but I don't think they're going to take down the Maryland.
Well, Maryland's still undefeated. I know I went straight in with the boom, UNC, but Maryland were ranked number 2 in the Inside Lacrosse poll this week. So, they're not a bad outfit. And, Coach Tillman always gets them cooking for championship weekend. So
definitely a couple of them would make the Newcastle Knights team.
Yeah, just a couple.
Yeah. None of the defensemen. The defense is pretty solid now that I've joined.
Yeah, well, need to replace Phil. He's basically retiring, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm off as well. Yeah, I'm too much timber, I think.
Since we've touched on it sort of obliquely, should we have a little talk about how the NCAA tournament's put together?
Yes, go on. I still don't even fully understand it myself.
Usually, the NCAA men's lacrosse tournament is a 16-team straight knockout. At the start of May, a group of coaches and administrators from lacrosse, they get together. Usually somewhere like Indianapolis, because that's where the NCAA is based, and they basically thrash it out. There's a number of conferences have automatic qualifiers into the tournament. So the American East, the Big Ten, the CAA, the MAAC, the Northeast Conference, the Patriot League, and the Ivy League all have automatic qualifiers. So the winner of that tournament, whether it's run as a league or they run it as a league and then have a knockout tournament at the end of it, whoever wins that gets in. And then they'll pick the best 8 other teams. And then what they'll do is when they have their 16-team list, they'll rank all of those teams, and the top 8 will be seeded, and they'll be distributed into opposite halves of the draw, as you would expect. So 1 goes on the left-hand side, 2 goes on the right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the first round is decided by they try and sort of balance the strength of both sides and take travel into account to try and remove any, massive travel distances, or try and reduce the number of big travels that are going on to reduce the costs. But from then on, it's a straight knockout. And then that's usually the first weekend of May, with it starting the next weekend, so the second weekend of May. By the time we get to the end of May, bank holiday weekend, as it is here, the Labor Day weekend in the States, you're down to 4 teams. And those 4 come together and play on the Friday. And then they play the semi-finals on the Friday, and they play the championship game on the Sunday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Don't know. Anyway, they have a day off, and then they play the final. And in the middle, the women's Division 1 championship is the men's Division 2 championship and the men's Division 3 championship. And that all takes place in the same stadium over the same weekend. That's the championship weekend that we keep referring back to, the grand festival of NCAA lacrosse.
Oh, well put. Very eloquent. Yeah, take a deep breath in. But I think my favorite, I love just before the Final Four, when you have them like hotly contested like qualifiers for the Final Four, they're my favorite games, because that's like you're gone or you're surviving, and there's such intensity. Oh, Brilliant.
Like for the top teams, they usually get a favourable draw in the first round. You know, if you've been one of the top performing teams throughout the regular season, you get a favourable draw, and that's fine because that's seeding. That's how it works. You know, you want your best teams to be going through, but by that second round, that quarterfinal round, you know, it's getting intense. You know, you could have a 1v6 maybe. Well, maybe not a 1v6, but like a 1v8 or 9, at which point that can be a bit tasty. Or, you know, a 2v7, and that's a little bit even tastier, 3v6. You know, I'm just reading out numbers here.
4v5, you could say.
But you know what I mean, right?
Whoa!
That'd be really tasty. Those numbers are really close together.
3v9?
That's my favourite. Oh, I love a 3v9.
That's a ratio I'll go with. Oh, thanks, lad.
I want to know how long you were going to go with that.
It can go longer.
3v9.
Yeah,
how long?
It could be a 3v7.
We've only got 10 minutes left. Let's not get but it's interesting though, the way you look at the automatic qualifiers and how that plays into the rest of the tournament. So for example, in the Big East, you know, there's Denver, Georgetown, Villanova, all ranked in the top 20. In the American East, you got UMBC, Stony Brook, Vermont, Albany are all in there. The Big Ten, Maryland and Rutgers are both top 5 teams this year.
Oh, Rutgers have done well.
Yeah, and then, you know, you've got Ohio State in there as well, and they're sort of ranked 12 to 15 at the minute, so you probably get 3 teams out of the Big Ten again. And then you've also got the teams that aren't, well, no Ivy League this year. So, you know, the perennial contenders, Harvard, Cornell, you know, those guys aren't in and around. So maybe that opens up a chance for maybe like a second tier team from one of the smaller conferences, maybe someone like Boston University in the Patriot League. You know, they're second to Army in the north part of that. Or Lehigh and Loyola are neck and neck in the southern part of the Patriot League. So, you know, there's loads of options. Hofstra, Hofstra there in the CAA.
Hofstra have only lost 2, haven't they? Hofstra are doing really well.
Yeah, Delaware and Hofstra are both right up there at the top of in the CAA. But what you got to remember is the conference rankings only take into account conference games. So what you tend to find is even teams that have who are doing really well out of conference might not actually be pushing that hard in the conference to get the automatic qualifier. But then again, they are in that at-large bid. But then there's teams who are outside of conferences or teams who aren't playing their conference games this year for travel reasons and COVID reasons. You know, people like Syracuse, people like Notre Dame, people like Hopkins, who are always in the conversation because of their overall strength of schedule. You know, the RPI or whatever the factor is that they call it, is a big NCAA thing. Just basically, how good are you in relation to everybody else based on your results against everybody else and everybody else's results against everybody else?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's Notre Dame's year.
It's a complicated spreadsheet, apparently. I don't know.
The Fighting Irish are winning this year. I've said it. It's our year.
That's bold. That's bold.
I don't know.
Straight out. Fighting Irish are doing it. We're doing it, boys.
I think Final Four. I don't think they've got the. I don't think there's the depth there. You know, when you compare them to somebody like Duke or UNC or even Maryland, you know, there's not the second and third level scorers that you need on championship weekend when everybody's tired and everybody's banged up on the Sunday, and you know, your big guys shout on the feet.
You have a big guy. You have number 99, Will York, dropping bombs from outside. And we're a fan of the Beans Lacrosse Club. It's all linking up, lads. Notre Dame's year.
Right, so your shout's Notre Dame. What about you, Higgs? Who's your shout? Win it all.
It's so difficult to see past Duke.
Really?
So difficult to see past Duke. But when you look at the way that Maryland are performing and their recent history, championship weekend, and the way that Coach Tillman seems to get his guys peaking at the right time, it's difficult to look. You know, they're going to be in with a shout. You know, UNC they're stacked all over the field. It's if anything, the lack of Ivy League this year and those Ivy League players getting dispersed around, you know, the graduating seniors. it's massive. You know, it's going to be a great tournament. And I know we've been saying this about the PLL all the time and how like we're super excited about it, but I think this could be some of the best college lacrosse that we've seen in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, well, even if not the best, I think like we've been pretty much saying the whole time, if not the best, definitely the most entertaining because of the sort of lack of training and stuff that's been going on. It's not as prevalent now as it was right at the beginning, but I'd argue still is a little bit. You know, even the best teams aren't as, you know, they've clearly not had as much training or as much like conditioning as they would have done in previous years, and that definitely does make it more entertaining. I think in terms of winning it, I think I'm going to go with you. My shout's going to be Maryland, purely because Duke and North Carolina are too obvious, and this season's been pretty wild. This season's been too crazy for it to end with either of the two out-and-out favourites winning it. But it's not been crazy enough for anyone other than Maryland to win it. So I don't think the universe would let it. It's been too much of a weird season already.
Okay, then
Duke or NC to win it.
If you want a proper little bit out there shout, okay, Denver.
No, Notre Dame.
The Island. The addition of Ireland makes them into a Final Four team.
Notre Dame.
Now, we were talking about it a few weeks ago, but he's done it again. You know, he's come out. He's had a massive week last week as well, and you know, he's elevating that team.
Fair. Notre Dame. We've got the lucky Irish.
I swear to God, if Notre Dame win it, I will never hear the end of it.
Yeah. Notre Dame. Shout out to the number 4 ranked team. Yeah, real big upset pick there. A nice one.
They've got the Fighting Irish and the luck as well.
I think Denver's a shout. I won't back them myself, but I think I'm agreeing with you that one. Denver could be a good shout.
Breakfast.
Can't write them off.
Are you hungry?
How long have we got? We've got 3 minutes. So we're gonna have to. How have we had 15 minutes more than usual, and we're running out of time? So our very clever plan for this was to talk about our draft predictions for the draft, and then segue very smoothly into the definite number 1 pick, Mike Sowers, who is our breakfast club this week. But we'll just completely leave the draft news. We'll come back to that another time. We all know Mike Sowers is going first, and. When is it? When is the draft? I had it up here. Anyway.
And
when?
It's 26, something like that.
Oh, right. We've got time. We've got loads of time. We don't need to talk about it today. Right. Go on, Darragh.
Okay.
Michael Sowers.
Right, Michael Sowers. I am setting the scene, boys. He's walking in, number 23, Michael Sowers. Duke quarter zipper, wearing chino shorts, a nice beige colour, and flip-flops because he's a student. He rolls into the kitchen on game day, obviously, asks Chad, here, throw me a bowl of Lucky Charms, will you? Because he's a student, that's all he has. But he rejects it and slaps the bowl of Lucky Charms away, and he actually says to Chad, I don't need no luck. Because he's absolutely smashing in goals week in, week out, grabs a protein shake and heads to the game.
Fair. And he's still the number 1 player in the world. You know, I'm with you on the whole student side of things. I think one of my favourite responses we got is from the Polly's very own Gareth, who said tuna and sweet corn sandwich, but he eats it on the bus. And I love the idea. That American college athletes have like the same habits and diet as UK university students. I love the idea that Michael Sowers goes to Tesco, picks up a meal deal, and he's eating his Doritos and drinking his innocent smoothie in the back of a coach on the way to a game, and he gets off and plays like he does. That's how
Leeds Met away or something like that. Yeah.
Leeds Met away, and he's eating one of those little salads you get, but he didn't come with a spoon, so he's eating the salad with his fingers.
If he was
on his way to the match.
If he was hungover, that would be perfect.
Yeah. Bottle of Iron Brew, that'll sort him right out.
Yeah.
Go on, Higgs. Got time for a quick one from you, and then we'll pass it on to the American football.
So Sowers is another Pennsylvania guy, right? And I did a little bit of research this week. Apparently there's such a thing in Pennsylvania for breakfast called scrapple, which seems to be sort of like almost like a pork-based haggis. So it's like pork meat and offal and scraps and like oats and stuff like that, and it's packed down into a loaf shape and it gets sliced up and fried up and eaten as a sandwich. I don't think you'd have anything to do with that.
Okay, no pork-based sandwiches.
You have eggs.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's like, you know, a proper D1 athlete's breakfast. You know, I'm thinking he's probably a big like seeds and nuts guy. So maybe he's got. So maybe it's not game day, but it's like early morning workout. So I mean, it's a superfood smoothie. Let's not get away from it. It's probably something like kale and blueberries, maybe some coconut water, something like that, just to change it up, with some flax seeds in there, maybe, because that's a big protein thing. Homemade granola bar.
Nice.
Homemade. How does he put time?
Oh yeah, man. No, he's a grown up.
It's a busy boy.
Remember, he didn't just go to Duke. He transferred into Duke from Princeton. Like, he's a smart guy.
Okay. Yeah,
let's give him some credit here. Let's give him some credit. So hit the gym, come back, and some weird after training breakfast. Maybe some pancakes, but not just pancakes, like protein pancakes, banana pancakes, sweet potato pancakes. We know that Rabel loves a sweet potato in the morning. So, you know, maybe he's modelling himself after P. Raves.
Yeah.
Horrible experience. Well, now we can put money on whether or not we think Michael Sowers or Chris Hogan is going to reply to my endless messages first and find out what we have for breakfast.
Say no.
No, Mike Sowers will reply to me. He will. I'll ask Greg. I'll ask Greg to tell him. Me and Greg, we're on first name terms now. Anyway, I think that's a couple of minutes over, actually. That's about our time up. And we'll pass over back to the football guys for this week. We'll be back next week and hopefully some stuff happens.
Cheers, lads. How can you start 15 minutes early and still overrun?
just for Breakfast Club. We just so much length in that.
Don't get me wrong, I wasn't cutting you off.
What we need is a full hour, Steve. A full hour just for us.
I'm starting to think that might be the way forward for you guys. You've gone from being the minority sport on the show to actually being the main attraction by the looks of it.
We have to make up for it. No one cares about lacrosse, so we have to like talk about it forever until people have no choice but to listen.
I'm sure if we can come to some kind of arrangement with Higgy about what we've been discussing off air, we'll be able to do a special show for you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Right, thank you guys. We'll catch